The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence.
That existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kind of somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NBBN. The focus is on you. By PodSquadPDX.com, painless podcasting. And by the kind support of KYHO fans everywhere through Patreon. Patreon, create on your own terms.
Coming right up, it's our special Oscar podcast. Well, KYHO wouldn't know an award if one bit you in the ass. Ha ha ha. Oh. Oh wow. Michael Broomage just slapped the shit out of me.
Keep those initials out your fucking Cybertronic mouth.
What the hell?
Those are my boys. Mine. I'm the one who gets to insult them. Me.
It was a joke, man.
Now step off, you friggin' over-glorified wannabe Ronco waffle maker. This is my gig.
This is the greatest day in podcasting.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
Anywho, I am the one, the only Mr. Broomage, here to say, I'm back, bitches. For the record, the Academy can kiss my grits. Now, let's get to the elephants in the room. Here's Andrew, Ty, Dr. Mark, and, well, he's more like a broken piece of concrete than a rock, but he's all ours, Chris.
And hello and welcome back, everybody. This is, of course, Keep Your Hat On. We are, of course, the Hats. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Dr. Mark Peterson and Ty Robert Anthony.
Hey, guys.
And Christopher Vacano.
Sure, everybody.
We, all the way home. How you doing, everybody?
Now you're just showing off.
So far, so good. Yeah. Mark is actually... when was the last time you were back to the old house? Are you gone?
There's been drama. There was drama.
You walked in and somebody else had already moved in?
No, but
that's not where you put that.
No. Yeah, that's right. No, my real estate lady called. She goes, I got some bad news. I said, what? She goes, somebody broke the glass in your back door.
Oh, shut up.
No.
Seriously?
And
you can measure that in hours.
And it's really weird because it's like to find my house, you have to know where it is even to get to it. So it's like, I can't imagine somebody broke in. There's nothing in the house. And we looked in the garage and nothing was taken. So it's like, there's just some sort of weird mystery about this broken glass. Anyway, I called the local glass folks and they went out and put some Lexan in there to temp it over.
Oh, it was just your front door. At least they didn't get the plate glass window out to the porch.
Oh yeah, no, this was actually pretty easy to do, but it was a little terrifying for a minute there. It's like, what? And then the inspection report came back and it's like, there's stuff. They have a better inspector than I did when I bought the house. If you've done, typically building inspectors do not always do a great job, right?
Not normally, no.
And I was expecting that again. And this guy was really great. And it was like, he found stuff that was wrong when I moved in. It was like, where the hell is my guy? Anyway, it's gonna be nice. The seller the buyer still wants to buy the house, which is all I care about.
Right.
And I got to have.
Did you get checked for radon? I'm interested to know about your radon situation.
So, I thought you were going to say rabies.
Do you have radon troubles out on the
we've
West
actually
Coast?
we do. The house that Heather and I are in, when she bought it, the buyer had to fold in radon abatement and we've got a radon sheet underneath we've got no basement. We're down on pad and down on dirt, and so we've got a radon abatement thing underneath the house.
We're okay. We're sort of okay, and we weren't required to do a radon test, so that tells you something too. So otherwise, actually all good. It looks like we're moving forward. I got to have somebody go service the furnace. That was one of the buyer asked to do that. It's like, well, that makes sense,
right?
So the buyer's been terrifically reasonable, and my real estate lady's been on top of it, and so I was there Friday.
Did you get a chance to do the real goodbye?
Oh, I sort of did that already. I've sort of done that already.
Okay.
I removed all of the magical protections.
Yeah, pocketed all the energy and said, all right, time to move on and move forward.
Yeah, and so I did that. When we moved in too, this is really charming, and we didn't find it. Apparently, the house had been up for sale for like months when we bought it finally. So they were really happy we got it. But when we were digging around in the backyard, we were putting in the garden, we found an upside down St. Joseph buried upside down in the backyard.
Oh, good.
Which is apparently some sort of Catholic magic designed to facilitate house sales.
Yes.
Yes. Saint Joseph asked to be crucified upside down.
Upside down.
No, that was Paul. Or that was Peter.
Oh, that was Paul. That's right. Or Peter. Right.
So let's get our saints straight, man.
Yeah, come on.
So
I'm
that's
rusty
where I am on all that.
The house we should be closing at the end of the month or like early in May, and that'll be awesome. And then Alex is finally getting hers up to snuff to go too. So
that's right, because she's 2 steps behind you, isn't she?
She's been working full time and time and a half.
Oh well, whatever, Mister. I'm on sabbatical for over a year.
Yeah, too bad.
Forever.
Well, This wasn't an accident or anything.
No, this sounds like there was some subliminal discussions happening, and then suddenly you went, "Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. You ready?
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much.
Let's do this thing.
It's pretty much.
We had to get on with our lives.
Yeah. So she is inbound, and actually we are integrating dogs tonight. In fact, so that'll be awesome.
Oh,
are they ready for it? Do you think
the dogs?
You said they're awesome. Kind of buddies, right?
Yeah, the dogs like each other already. So
it's the cat.
It'll be Fred, who is. We've already set up I have all these stairs now, but at the top one of the landings, I have the cat gate set up. Right. So that Fred can be safely up behind there and look down in, disparagingly down at the
stupid unwashed hoi polloi down below her.
Yeah, you know how cats are, and so that's
yes, I do.
There.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all good. Thank you so much. I think we're okay. The last bit I have to do is I have to install the reverse osmosis water filtration system today.
So good. You and plumbing.
You know what, Mark? How is the water straight out of the tap up there?
Actually, it's not. Well, in Milwaukee, it's kind of not horrible.
It's not horrible, boy, but it ain't West Bend water. It ain't hard water. Seriously, we got water hard enough in southeastern Wisconsin. You could drive a nail through it and hang a picture off of it. It is so good.
And see, well, Andy lived in the metropolis of Germantown as opposed to West Bend,
city.
And I'll tell you the city. And there's a difference between Germantown and West Bend, and that is that the wells in Germantown are 1,400 feet deep.
Yeah.
And the wells in West Bend are 80 feet deep.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's groundwater in an agricultural area. And it's like, well, this explains a lot about the gene pool. Anyway.
We love you, West Bend. Don't take it wrong. But
and the reason I ask is because everybody has these water filters and or has just cases of water in their in their fridge.
Crazy to me. That's crazy to me. The tap water is actually fine. I cook with it and all the rest of it. And Milwaukee has really decent stuff.
I kind of thought that was...
we have ever since the cryptosporidium outbreak of which I was I partook of.
You were in there, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty grim.
My favorite part about if you guys remember cryptosporidium hitting the Milwaukee water supply back in the 90s, I think, right, Andy?
Late 80s.
We had this awesome mayor here named John Nordquist, who's a really interesting character. Anyway, it was one of those moments where the Midwest hit the East Coast media because now that's a big story, right? Oh, Milwaukee's entire water supply. And so they interviewed Mayor Nordquist on Good Morning America. And they said, "Oh, isn't it true that your water is in a complete freaking disaster?" And Norquist, being the good Midwestern mayor, goes, "Oh, we had some troubles, but it's okay now." And it was like, boom.
Oh yeah, and you know what, Mark, you were right. You reminded me of that. It was in '93 that we had our crypto outbreak.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah,
it was like,
I forgot because I was
there.
in school. Yeah,
He wasn't willing to make it a huge deal for the national media.
No,
so anyway,
it was more of a huge deal than
God, people died and stuff.
Yeah, so, somebody that I knew died that had it because they had HIV. I didn't know them super closely, but I come to find out that they passed away because they got the infection and they were immunocompromised and so. But no, normally and like you said, West Bend water versus Germantown water. Germantown was agricultural, but it was not the same. It wasn't the same condensation of agriculture footprint. And that's just it. Our wells were massively deep. And that whole area of southeastern Wisconsin sits on top of I think it's over a kilometer of sedimentary rock. And something so you get nice down deep in there. And all that limestone is just the ultimate filter for water. And all you get is ultra pure water that tastes like water is supposed to taste. It's all minerals. It tastes like Evian water. And I always felt very spoiled by that until I actually moved out here and started drinking out of the Bull Run Reservoir, which is just absolutely pristine, clear, wonderful glacial water that we get off from Mount Hood.
And the reason that I asked was because, I'm used to Bull Run. Right. I've gotten used to Bull Run, and I just think it's silly for people to have cases of water in their fridge.
It's hard for people from good tasting water.
I have a hard time
understand why
even the filters, right? And then I go to see my father in San Jose.
Ooh.
I get off the airport, and I'm like, there's a water fountain. I'm parched.
Oops.
That was a mistake.
Like drinking pool water.
Oh yeah,
no. I could handle pool water a little bit better than I could handle this. Was just raw.
Because you could at least taste the purifying agents they're dumping in.
At least I could taste the chlorine.
Right, exactly.
This is good for me. Just inject straight Giardia right into your arm.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell you what. Let's take a quick break. We've got a pretty significant discussion that we've all agreed to have here. It's time to have the uncomfortable discussion about the elephant in the room. But until we come back, sit tight, keep your hat on, and I don't know, don't go anywhere. We got nothing better to do except yap at you guys, so sit tight.
Hat Nation! Want to support the show and help it grow or, keep the lights on? Head on over to kyhopodcast.com/shop and buy some cool swag. Shirts, phone cases, hoodies, and hats. I mean, duh. All proceeds go right into Andy's pocket. Help keep KYHO in your ears. That's kyhopodcast.com/shop. Go get some cool stuff, rep the show, and as always, keep your hat on, which is a lot easier when, you have a hat, right?
And welcome back to Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Dr. Mark C.E. Peterson, Christopher Vacano, and Ty Robert Anthony. And it's time for us to talk about the thing that happened.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about this, but I think we're gonna frame this in a slightly more encompassing way. We're gonna open up the umbrella a little bit. Now, we all had that moment where we looked at social media and we went, wait, he did what? And then we saw the video. And, and that's just it. This is the level of infamy that now needs no name attached to it. But we're going to just come out and do it. So everybody knows Will Smith got up at the Oscars and gave Chris Rock, who was presenting the award for Outstanding Documentary, gave him an open-handed slap across the face and then walked back. This, of course, was because Chris Rock made, and, you know, here's the thing. We don't know. There's a lot of talk. Did Chris Rock know about Jada Pinkett Smith's alopecia? Was it just a joke writer that flew a joke out there? Chris decided. Some people are saying Chris went off script. Irrespective of any of that, Jada flinched, made a face. At first, you see in the video, Will Smith reacted to it with kind of that Will Smith roll back, throw his head back laugh, and then suddenly got up, walked up on stage, and open hand slapped Chris across the face. Now, none of us here are saying that that's okay. None of us here are saying that Chris got what he deserved or that Will was right. I think we're all in agreement that you don't have a right to get up and slap somebody, irrespective of whether or not it's on international television. But this brings up a much larger question, and that is, we're all dealing with this idea of freedom of speech. Over the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years, at least the previous administration's worth of time, everybody is screaming, and I mean everybody is screaming about free speech. What does that mean? Where are we going with the ideas of free speech? And, you know, we all have this trite and beat up saying that, you know, is trite and beat up for a reason, because it's right. And that is, you have a right to freedom of speech. You don't have a right to freedom of consequences. But that goes both ways. Some would be able to say, well, see, Chris Wright had a right to say what he wanted to say, but he got the, you know, the result that comes from saying that. But the other people, or the other side of this is, you know, Will Smith had a right to get up and do something. He didn't have a right to go slap somebody in the face. And now he certainly doesn't have the right to freedom of consequences. He has, in the intervening time, he has resigned from the Academy, while the Academy is now doing its own, and this is for all our, you know, listeners, not viewers, air quotes, an investigation. What is that going to do?
Well, as I've read a little bit deeper, also is that his resignation from the Academy is already kind of throwing roadblocks into the next two pictures that he's already got in the can.
Yeah, I've heard that. What was it? He had a Amazon thing that was being delivered, developed a new series, and they immediately hit pause on that guy. And there was another a story based on, well, let's just cut that short and say pretty much all Will Smith projects right now have been put on indefinite pause.
So before we get into this conversation,
yeah,
at the top of this,
too late.
I want to point something out. First of all, we have so many more pressing issues to be discussing.
Oh, you mean like real problems?
In the mainstream. On the flip side of that, isn't it crazy cool to have a news cycle that is painfully slow?
For a change, you mean?
For a change, right? Because that is what at least 60% of mainstream coverage has been touching on this, and this is of course all over the internet, and we're not paying attention to, or we're being distracted by. It's not that we're not paying attention.
Yes,
we're being distracted by this talk, and it's taking up a lot of airspace that something more important could be taken. But it is nice to just have something else to look at. News cycle.
I mean, the news isn't just Twitter anymore. Is what you're saying?
One that's slow enough that there's room for something like this to come, sort of draw the attention.
As trivial. I won't say that it's inconsequential, but I will say that it is trivial.
Well, is it?
Yeah.
Is it trivial? And, you know, I say that from a genuine place. Whether or not it's culturally significant.
I don't know that. I think there is some cultural significance. I think that it may not have started out trivial, but it has ended. The place where we are today, continuing to focus on this, giving it airspace, is now it's now turned into trivial.
Well, and how much of this, I wonder, how much of this is that it was Will Smith? How much of this is that it was one of America's darlings? I mean, this is one step off from watching Tom Hanks snap in public and stab somebody in the eye.
Just thinking, if Mickey Rourke had done this, it would have gone,
we would have, nobody would have blinked.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Whether it's, Hollywood, whether you're in the music business, in the film business, the celebrity seems to elevate you to a stratosphere that looks much different than real life.
Yeah.
I think that Will Smith, I don't think that this is new behavior from Will Smith.
Apparently
I just
not.
think that he's got some good PR to have covered it up this far.
Yeah,
Might
perhaps. But to build on your point, Andy, not just that it was Will Smith who has at least a veneer of, being this super guy, right? But that it happened at the Oscars. This very carefully orchestrated, very glitzy. I mean,
not only that it happened at the Oscars, that it could happen at the Oscars. Arguably one of the most curated moments in entertainment television, one of the biggest events, that there was no set of safety breaks put in place for somebody to be a little wacky.
Yeah. And here's the other thing is they all know that they're being televised to 1 billion people. This is something else to pay attention.
Yeah. So what part of your brain, what part of your I make $100 million a year brain goes, this is
and that's just it. It was reactive and it was impulsive.
Well, the New York Times this morning wrote about this, right? And they pointed out that he's actually outed these personality issues in the memoir he published last year.
I saw some of that where Will really started to go further in depth, particularly with the trauma between him and his father and his mother.
Right. And so we have this whole background radiation of, the reason why he acted like this is because of his childhood traumas and so on. It's like, okay.
Well, that explains it. It doesn't excuse it.
Well, no, but you're right,
Correct.
Ty, in that this was obviously fomenting under the surface of Will Smith for a long time. And now look, I've got trauma in my background. We've all got trauma in our backgrounds to one degree or another. Nobody here gets out alive, etc. But this really might be one of these very uncomfortable moments. And we've seen it a few times in the past, where I guess people's shadows catch up with them. People like, Paul Rubens getting caught masturbating in a theater. Where
Kevin Spacey,
right? Yeah. So many of them, and some of them are really salacious and nasty, and some of them are kind of quirky,
nothing
and weird.
Burgers.
Yeah, exactly. But it does make one wonder: was Will Smith, and like you said, was Will Smith just working with handlers who were just so good at being on top of him in this one time? But the other part of it is, this was arguably Will Smith's greatest moment.
Yeah.
He won Best Actor. And not only that, he won Best Actor for a role that was an illustration of a father driven to great lengths for love of his family. And that right there makes me uncomfortable, but it also goes, what tape was running in his head when he had that reaction? Was it, I'm up for winning Super Dad Oscar. Should I not stand up for my family right now? How I perceive that a masculine man, a masculine father and husband would.
Yeah, see, and that's just it. I really feel like, did he have the right to be upset at the joke and having his wife be a focal point of a joke?
I want to say sure.
Sure
Yeah.
he did. Right?
And
That's
I don't
his
think
right
any
to
of
do
us
that.
are arguing that. Yeah.
Let's not say that it's a right. Let's say that it's a prerogative. So he has that
Fair enough.
prerogative. Does he have the prerogative to want to step to Chris Rock and be have some sort of heated exchange?
You can want anything you want. Yeah.
But there's a green room. There's a press room, right? There's a time for that. That could have been handled much, much better than on live television.
And the thing that really occurs to me here, and here I got to put the disclaimer. I'll play the disclaimer sound. Oh, no, that's a song. Sorry. There's my disclaimer sound. We're 4 middle-aged, privileged white guys. Okay, disclaimer in place. What does it say that Will Smith, arguably one of the most visible Black Americans there is, felt it was a good idea to get up and slap Chris Rock, one of the other most visible Black Americans there is? What does that say? And what part of Will Smith's brain shut off thinking that this is going to be all right?
Well, I think you started to tap into it a moment ago when you used the word masculine. I've actually very much been trying to avoid the hot takes and a lot of the reaction and response. Every once in a while,
how's that going?
Well, it's gone pretty well. I mean, the beginning of the week really sucked because it was everywhere. But I did come across some good, thoughtful analysis of
there's been plenty of it.
What might have been going on. And one article I read made the observation that, and again, this is not justifying the behavior at all. This is trying to understand the behavior, which I think is what we're trying to do.
Good for you.
No,
seriously.
Is that this didn't happen in a vacuum. This happened against the backdrop of Will and Jada's marital problems,
or at least marital issues. We'll say I don't even think it's fair to call them problems.
Well, we
sure.
Don't know.
Well, and Will essentially being very publicly humiliated over those issues and very publicly emasculated over those issues. And then, working really hard to rebuild this image of the two of them as a healthy, thriving couple and family. And then this one little tip, a sideways joke in rather poor taste,
that he initially seemed to receive neutrally, if not positively. But then when he caught the look of Jada, it's almost like if you watch it, you can see it happen in real time in microseconds, where he reels back and laughs because it's Chris Rock and I'm supposed to be laughing at Chris Rock. And he took a stab at my partner. And then he sees the partner and he goes, "Oh shit, I got to go take care of something."
So exactly. So there's this pressure, I mean, the look she gave, I mean, she shot, it was amazing to me, because she shot shade at Chris Rock at the same time that she shot, "What kind of man are you?" at Will Smith.
Right. It was like one eye on Chris Rock, one eye on Will Smith. But here's the thing. I don't think that that's what she was trying to radio to Will.
No.
I think it was more, don't you be laughing at that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Will misread the signal and also just sort of snapped and did the, okay, this is the moment that I reassert my alpha status.
It could be, but I still stumble over
as a bully.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. That's a totally legitimate thing, twig to throw on this fire. Because, and when we come back from the break here, we're gonna pivot on this, and Dr. Mark is gonna help us with something here, because it leaves for me, right? Yeah, laugh now. It brings two things into this discussion that one has been elevated in the public consciousness now because of this, but the other one I don't think has as much. The first one is what we witnessed, in my opinion. What we witnessed was a crossover from a place of masculinity to a place of toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that it brings up in the discussion is, what is the place of satire when it comes to open discussions in public? And this idea that, yeah, you got the right to say something, but as with all rights, they aren't infinite. Where does that line happen? And when we come back, we'll have more to say, because that's who we are and what we do. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. I'm Andrew. That's Chris, along with Dr. Mark and Ty, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Where did I put that hat?
Oh, God, I keep losing it.
Hey everybody, Michael, your stalwart announcer here, the voice of the Keep Your Hat On podcast. We really hope you're enjoying the shows we put out every month and the bonus goofiness we try and throw in. If you do, we'd really appreciate your support. While we'd love it if you could help us out with a monthly donation by heading over to patreon.com/NBBN, please don't forget that you can also support us by telling your friends, relatives, the hot Amazon delivery guy, hell, your potted fern, about the show, and do the like, click, and subscribe thing. That's free, and it helps us out more than you might suspect. We just want to keep putting something good out into this bananas world at this extra bananas time, and we want you along for the ride. No matter what, thanks so much for audio visualizing. Now, let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to the Uncomfortable Discussion Room. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Dr. Mark Peterson, Chris Vicano, and Ty. And when we were at break, Ty brought up something that I think is salient, and I'm going to throw it in here. And that is, Ty, you'd mentioned that we're so busy talking about, Will Smith and his mea culpa, where, he tried to mea maxima culpa through Twitter. That didn't go very far. That was just like really a Twitter response to this. And then, he upped it, and then, his letter resigning his place from the Academy was made public, and through his publicist and all that stuff. But Ty, you mentioned that the one thing that we're not really talking about much is the response from Chris Rock. Now, Chris had a gig the following night. Chris is out on tour right now, and
do you know the name of that tour, by the way?
I forget it, but it's relevant.
Ego Death.
Yeah, that's right. Ego Death is the name of his current tour. And Chris, and I've heard a couple, people made some recordings, illicit recordings on their phones and stuff like that, where Chris comes out and he says, I'm still processing what happened, but like Chris Rock does, because Chris Rock is a comedian's comedian, he goes, I'm still processing this. I wrote an entire show that's not about this. I spent a lot of time on this show, and I kind of like to focus on that right now. I'll have more to say about it, but now's not the time. Now's the time for this show.
Yeah, I think his radio silence has been something to really look up to. I think the fact that he didn't strike back on stage and laughed it off and just let it roll off his back.
Held his composure.
Not only did he hold his composure, he stood up there and went, well, there's the greatest moment in television history.
And then at the after party, listening to Wanda Sykes, he actually came to Wanda Sykes and apologized to her.
That floored me. He came to her and he said, I'm so sorry. This was supposed to be. And she's like, why are you apologizing? And she's like, this was supposed to be your moment. This was supposed to be my sister's moments to be able to be out there and be recognized and have your time in the sun. And it's all overshadowed by this. And the one thing that a number of people have been saying, and that is completely and utterly salient to this discussion, is that we still tend to, whenever you see somebody doing something stupid on YouTube and getting caught doing something stupid, they forgot the first rule of modern life. And that is, everything lives forever now. There is no shadow for you to hide your stupidity in. If it's recorded on a phone, it's gonna be out there forever.
Right.
But I think you're right, Ty. I think even with just his silence, Chris rose above this in a way that I don't think I'd have the intestinal fortitude to do.
I think, I mean, as we're talking about toxic masculinity and Will Smith, what the hell was he thinking? I think it's contrasted by Chris Rock's very calm, cool, almost detached demeanor, and the way that
I think it's because his head's still ringing.
Well, it was a slap, which indicates to me that Will Smith knew what he was doing when he did it.
I also have to wonder if Chris isn't doing some reflection and walking back to the inciting event, which was the joke itself.
That might be. I think that we do have to give some.
I'm not going to put that out of.
This is tricky when you start to do that. Andy turned me on to a really great podcast from Mark
Maron. Yeah,
and he did a great thing about when is comedy insulting and when is it really comedy.
Yeah,
and maybe we can put a link to that in there below. And it's
absolutely. I mean, I'll always rep for Mark Maron as far as one of the OG podcasts, and not only that.
Oh yeah,
watching, and by watching I mean that figuratively, but I mean anybody who listens to Maron knows that you're actively participating in the observation of a middle-aged guy dealing with his shit, or at least trying to. And to hear him, and I've been super busy this past week with work, and so I didn't have the ability to listen to Maron's take on this. But listening to Maron talk about comedy is like listening to a surgeon talking about how he uses or how they use a scalpel.
And it's like, look, it's nice to hear. There are a bunch of comedians out now who will simply say that they can say whatever the hell they want to say, and they're being comedians. And the truth of that is that's a lie.
Yeah,
you can't just say any damn thing and be funny. And it's like you can't just say any kind of insulting, horrible thing about somebody and then go, ha 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 ha. I was only kidding.
And there's plenty of that going on these days.
Plenty. Chris Rock is not one of those guys as a rule, typically.
Yeah, no, generally not. Well, and
he normally doesn't punch down.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of an accepted standard in comedy that if you're punching up, it's comedy. If you're punching down, it's something else. It's bullying.
Yeah, it's bullying. Thank you. Yeah.
So all of those things, all that stuff seems to be in play here too.
And there's there's another piece of this. Since we're talking about this in the context of the First Amendment and what does that represent and what does that mean, I'm going to go back to your original question. What does that mean? I mean, the First Amendment is probably the core article of faith in the United States. It is central to everything else, because without that, all the rest of it falls apart.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we set this country up, so that we could be critical and have that be protected.
And yet, this is a country of 3 billion people, with 3 billion different ideas of exactly what that means.
I don't think there's that many just yet, though.
No,
well, we're close. I'm sorry, 300 million.
There we
I'm
go.
sorry.
Sorry. That's half of China right there. 3 billion people.
300
Our
million.
economy would be much different. But
it's
Chris,
Sunday. I'm not thinking clearly.
I think what you bring up
clearly
is right, and that is we all have our own idea of what that right stands for, what that right means, and not only that, and what the word right means.
Well, and so we have to start to look at, okay, where are the areas of consensus, and try to put ourselves in the minds of the framers, but don't stop there, because that's a stupid place to stop. Think about where there are the lines of agreement on how we apply that and how we treat the right to free speech. And well,
how does this apply to comedy then, Chris? Where are you going with this?
As sort of a legal standard, the view is very much that political speech is absolutely protected. No question about it. That was the whole point.
Yep.
But you start to move into things like obscenity, offensive humor, comedy, stand-up comedy, satire, social commentary, or just going out and gibbering whatever bullshit you want out into the world. Yeah, that's not so locked in. And with comedy especially, I mean, part of comedy, there's been a tradition in comedy for well over 70 years of testing the envelope, of pushing the limit.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the likes of Lenny Bruce, and and he's been very much on my mind lately.
Yeah, same.
And it's very complex.
I'm just remembering the joke about, if Jesus had been killed, all these little kids would be wearing little miniature electric chairs around their necks.
Right? Yeah.
Sorry.
It does. No, thank you for that. I'll take comic relief in this discussion at any point.
Let me just jump in here, Chris.
Yeah, please.
And part of some of the hard lines are what you said before, which is what, Fred?
Wow.
Freddie has something to say here.
Fred's got shit to say.
That was an opinion.
Oh, her life is going to
We're going to leave that one in.
Yeah, she's going to get a new dog friend. Anyway, the only speech that's actually protected by the First Amendment is political speech.
True.
The rest of it's up in the air. And so, you can't just go out and say any damn thing you want about people, because that could be taken as libel and slander. You can get sued for that.
Yep.
And so the only protected speech, and so this has been used as to justify all sorts of abuse, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't yell fire in a crowded movie house. And so it's like, the question is whether or not Chris Rock yelled fire, right? I think if you're going to go this way.
Still wonder if you can yell movie in a crowded firehouse, though.
I wonder that too.
Yeah. But thank you, Steve Martin. Speaking of,
my thinking is to kind of stay in the realm of comedy. We've got lots of examples where, and even relatively recent examples, where the key thing in comedy is timing, among other things. But timing, yeah.
Timing, yeah.
I think of Kathy Griffin's tweet that basically destroyed her career. It wasn't.
And that, irrespective of what you think of her and her comedy. And this, for our listeners, back when Trump was it? I think it was during the campaign, where Kathy Griffin held up a faux severed head and was covered in blood.
I don't understand.
It pretty much just, that was her Thelma and Louising off the cliff of her career.
I couldn't quite get that. So Ozzy can bite the head off of animals. She makes fun of something by doing something mockingly.
Well,
and her career gets ended.
We don't know what drugs were involved.
May
17.
For me,
thank you.
Personally, just looking at it, I was like, okay, it wasn't particularly funny. It didn't add anything to the conversation.
I don't think I didn't feel like there was any creativity
there was
to
nothing,
the commentary.
Yeah, it was.
I thought it was just shock. But do
Kathy
you
Griffin.
have a right?
Who are we talking about here?
Kathy
Oh,
Griffin.
yeah.
Do you have, and here, this whole thing, as it ties into comedy, comes back to one thing for me. Do you have a right to be a dick? Do you have a right to just say something terrible, hoping it will get a laugh out of the room? Or at least
you're just talking in general?
Kind of, but specifically in comedy.
No, about comedy in general is what.
Comedy in general.
We're not focusing on one individual altogether.
No, because really that's where this whole freedom of speech argument goes to. I have a right to say anything I want while I'm performing because it's a performance. And is there, that drags us up to this discussion of when you're performing, is the performer saying that? Is it part of the performance? When the performer walks off the stage, are they no longer culpable for the things they said during a performance if they turn around and say, but I was performing? That's not how I really feel. You shouldn't take it that way.
That's really problematic.
That is so dicey.
That's really problematic to try to wrap yourself in that particular veil. And
those are choppy waters.
Mark,
but let's look at like Andrew Dice Clay.
Exactly. Well, here, I'll throw that over to Mark. Mark?
I'm laughing because one of Andrew Dice Clay's most vulgar jokes still cracks me up.
And we're only saying this for educational purposes.
I still feel just horrible that this, because it's like about 2 minutes into Andrew Dice Clay, you realize what he's up to, and then it's like, okay, I'm done now listening to this. This isn't interesting anymore. And it's like, it's interesting. I think Sam Kinison died at the right time too, because
Kinison was the other one. Yeah.
He cracked me up like crazy, but at some point, you just, Sam, just shut the fuck up, please.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's
your 15 minute on stage was done 4 minutes into your set.
And let's talk about the Affleck guy.
Oh, Gilbert Gottfried?
Affleck.
Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh, yeah, the Shout comics.
And it's like, I couldn't care less. And it's like some of it, anyway. So here's the deal, right? It's like, it's possible to be funny. If you're a comedian, you should be funny. And there's a whole bunch of them around now that are not really that funny, but they're hiding behind the skirts of the First Amendment to justify their work. And some people like it. This is the other thing. This is where it gets complicated, right? Is there still people who really love that kind of stuff? And it's like, are we able to tell them that they're wrong? Do you know what I mean?
And the thing, are they living Are they getting their bully yah-yahs out vicariously?
Well, see, isn't that a great question, right? Because it feels like that the whole country's been through this little spasm where everybody was given permission to behave badly.
The top guy was behaving badly.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that's what happened.
No,
I don't think that's what happened with Chris Rock when he.
No, I don't either.
I think he riffed that. By the way, I don't think that was a joke he'd written for the Oscars.
No, I don't think so either. I think you're right. I think that was a riff.
Even when Will was walking up to him, he said, it was a joke about G.I. Jane.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, too bad. And it's like later on, he'll go, it wasn't as funny as it could have been.
I didn't think it was funny at all.
I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was punching down. And I actually caught this micro moment before Will got up where Chris understood that the joke landed flat.
Yeah, he knew it had bombed.
Yeah.
There was already,
and the next words out of his mouth were not going to be "ow." It was going to be okay. Kind of.
Sorry about that one.
Yeah, kind of modulate. And,
I think he absolutely knew that the joke went flat. And I don't think that it wasn't funny because this woman was facing some health problems that maybe Chris was or wasn't aware of. Who knows?
Yeah. And to be clear, we don't know what Chris knew because Chris has not addressed that portion of it. And we've got some people saying that it was written for him. We got some people say he was riffing, but we don't know that.
But what I'm saying is I just found the joke flat. It wouldn't have mattered. It was a G.I. Jane joke. What kind of obscure, crazy thing is that?
Honestly, it could have gone exactly the opposite direction of if Will had not gotten out of his chair, everybody would have shrugged it off and been like, yeah, that was stupid. And it would have been forgotten about.
And
10
Rock
minutes later.
Rock would have looked like the dick.
It would have been a much bigger slap for Will to have sat in his chair and just gone, just wagged his finger and went,
right?
No.
Shook his head like, no, and you don't be doing that about
then. Then boom, you're done. And then you look classy and blah, blah, blah.
I thank you for bringing up that flow of occurrences, because I think that's what people aren't seeing right now. If Will would have stayed in his seat, we would be talking about a dynamic that was 180 degrees flipped in the other direction. But
and
really,
by the way, ruined it.
I was gonna say, I would be sitting here just raving about how thrilled I am that Summer of Soul got the Oscar.
Well, and like Chris said to Wanda Sykes,
I want to see all that footage.
How many black performers had their thunder taken from them because of what he did? And it really it speaks in my mind to something in Will Smith literally just going offline, okay? The common sense bone and the I can look 5 minutes into the future bone just were shut off.
His brain flipped. His frontal cortex went off. Now, what was the reasoning for that? Well, I don't know. I don't know what has happened to him in the last few months or in the last few days leading up to that point.
We covered that a little bit in that, he has disclosed that he's had some very deep family trauma between his father, his mother, and himself. And I think it all just came to a head. But it comes back to me, this idea of what was this? Okay, was this any kind of useful or legitimate commentary? Okay, we're going to say no.
Yeah.
Was it satire?
Wait.
The joke.
I mean, Chris.
Yeah. Was Chris's comment the joke? The joke?
No.
Oh.
Was it satire? No.
Yeah.
It was a quip, a bad quip.
It was a pop culture reference that
it was a pop culture reference, but the big significant portion of it to me is I think we are seeing also a transition in the public consciousness about being critical about people's appearance. And in that way, and again, I want to go on record here. Okay, I want to go on record as saying none of us think that anything about this was okay. We think that Chris's joke was tasteless, and we certainly think that Will Smith's response was not only disproportionate, but was, I'm just going to say it. That
criminal?
that was assault. We all think that this was bad, but was this whole situation precipitated by a needless comment about somebody's appearance?
Okay.
I think that us changing into a model where sure sign of a dick move is talking about somebody's appearance. Jada Pinkett Smith has absolutely no ability whatsoever to control her alopecia. Okay? I've got friends with alopecia, and I understand that for people like me and Ty who don't ritually shave our heads, it's significant. We're tied up in our appearance. We're tied up in this picture that we project out into the world. And when something comes along that's not under your control, that affects your appearance, that can be a very internally damaging experience. And for Chris Rock to make a joke about it, even though it wasn't about it, his joke, and Ty, you brought this up, his joke was about G.I. Jane. We're not even going to bring Demi Moore into this. But was his joke based on mere appearance? And why would you find that funny? And why would you use that? Isn't that what a bully does?
As you were talking, the thing that I was thinking about too, and it couples with the appearance question, is it was singling out one individual in a room full of hundreds of her colleagues and friends and associates. You know, it wasn't Oprah Winfrey, everybody gets a joke. It was one individual. So in a sense, I mean, the phrase that just keeps coming back into my head, thinking about this whole set of events, thinking about Kathy Griffin, thinking about a lot of these things, is what a bunch of stupid fucking hills to die on. You know, why would you choose these hills to make your stand?
You know, you can broaden it out from here too. Fran Lebowitz wrote a really great column about all this business if you can find it. And she said, you know, first of all, why are there still Oscars? Right? This is a bunch of multimillionaires giving each other shit, right? And it's like, what? And now,
and this idea of the Academy.
Yeah.
So,
oh, sure, I bet. Yeah.
Well, and Russell Brand called that out too. He did this fantastic 15-minute piece that was an entirely different look about how the outside world penetrated the veil of this giant glitzy turd that is the Oscars.
Well, I was just going to say, let's play some word association. I'm going to say a word.
This is good. I like this, Ty.
This word. I'm going to say about these Oscars and this Academy, and you are going to. Well, maybe
should I have my finger on this? Should I have my finger on the censor button?
Probably. Maybe you don't say what comes up for you, right?
That's right. This is FM radio back in the day.
You'll be just like the rest of the audience that'll go, oh, or at least some of the audience. So here's the word.
Okay.
Mental.
Ooh. I get okay.
and the second word that I'm looking for starts with an M. This whole thing of giving the awards and all this.
Yeah, you're gonna say the self-pleasuring M word.
This is a bunch of folks stroking
it's a big
each
circle
other.
jerk. Yeah,
on the back.
Yeah.
I was gonna say meltdown actually, but that's case specific to this moment. I do see what you're saying, Ty, in that really isn't that what the whole Oscar thing is.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Oh, what a nice jumping off point for the deep end of the pool. Would you like to go in there now?
Oh. Tell you what, let's take another quick break, and we're gonna come back.
I don't know. My toes ain't touching now, so let's go.
We're gonna jump in to the deep end
what I was
with Dr. Peterson in just a second. Stay tuned. Stay where you are. Don't put your phone on mute. We'll be right back. Hold on.
Pervert.
That's got to stay in.
That's a good out. That's a good going. That's a good out.
You're tuned to NBBN,
the Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.
And we're back for what is probably the final segment of this show, but we're talking a little bit about the slap heard round the world and
the slap.
So,
slap.
Mark, drag us into the deep end here with you. Give us something here.
Well, Ty said it, and I was like, so why are we doing Oscars again? And it's like, so I'm going to be the Debbie Downer here. We've just spent 57 minutes and 39 seconds talking around
unedited.
Yeah, unedited.
It'll be shorter, but not much.
Thank you, Andy. Please get the machete out. But we've been spending the last hour or so sort of milling around, and sifting and winnowing through the mental states of Chris Rock and Will Smith, and and I don't want to put too fine a point on this, but they're just actors, right?
Yeah, they're just human beings.
They're entertainers.
They're just actors. And while we're talking about this, the wife of a Supreme Court justice has implicated herself in an insurrection against our democracy.
Oh, that.
And the Soviet Union is back in business.
Yeah, just under different branding. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, okay. So this is like, so here's what my philosophy buds have been saying. This is the bumper sticker that's been going around. Is like, did anybody see Will Smith slap Chris Rock? And we've just been saying things like, and this, will unpack this directly. Adorno was right. And so Adorno was one of the members of a group called the Frankfurt School.
Not hot dogs. Nothing to do with hot dogs, just to make sure.
No, it has to do with Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
And there's actually, we didn't talk about this before, did we?
Well, I mean, you drop Frankfurt pretty frequently.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal. They wrote this awesomely difficult book called the Dialectics of Enlightenment. And yeah, which one of my other favorite podcasts is this bunch of guys who called The Partially Examined Life. They do really good work.
Oh, excellent.
There, by the way. Yeah.
We'll put a link down below to them because I've listened to a number of times.
They're actually really good. And they made a great comment about these books from Frankfurt School. It's like they're really just quote factories because you can just go in and open a page and find something.
They really are. They're a slog to read through if you're new to it, but boy, there's a lot of gems in it. There's a lot of gems in it.
So, but here's the deal. So the big deal is that one of the chapters in this book is called The Culture Industry. And
right there is a quote.
Right. Well, so here's what they thought. And again, if I might be repeating myself from a previous podcast, but
tough shit. It's our podcast.
Well, there you are. One of the this has always struck me as kind of hilarious because I know a lot of people who used to be Marxists, and then once the Soviets fell and we found out what they'd actually done, ran for the hills. But this was not true in the 1930s because in 1930 or so, there's a bunch of guys at the School of Social Research at Frankfurt. This is the bunch, and they're good Marxists, and they just couldn't figure out why there hadn't been revolutions every place else in the world, just like there'd been in Russia. Because if you're a good middle class, well overeducated Marxist, and you're sitting there in Germany, and it's 1930, that's like the worst place in the world you could be. And there was no revolution. Hitler was a couple years out; he was coming in, and they could not, for the life of. And this is if you were a Marxist in the 1930s, this is the sort of thing that would make you crazy. Because the Russians did it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the matter with the rest of Europe? Okay. So they couldn't figure out for the life of them why there hadn't been a revolution. Okay, well, tick-tock, tick-tock. Time goes by. Hitler comes to power. The boys get the hell out of Germany, end up in New York for a while. And then they end up in, of all places, in Hollywood. And while they're on their way there, while they're still in New York, they get this great idea. And this is, so now I'm coming back to the Debbie Downer portion of the show. They came up with this idea that it's like, well, how come people aren't angry enough, right? How come the masses aren't feeling the pinch? I mean, they were bringing wheelbarrows of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread, right? From under the Weimar Republic, right? The inflation was through the ceiling. People were starving. It was horrible. The Treaty of Versailles had stuck it to them in really the worst ways, in all the ways that were going to make Hitler possible. Okay. And these boys just couldn't figure out. It's like, what in the hell is the problem? Adorno and Max Horkheimer hit on the idea that, well, maybe there's something that is interrupting their anger and resentment and their misery. And they looked around, they thought, well, what is it? And they thought, oh my God, it's the movies,
Hollywood
and radio
and music,
bread and circuses.
It's the culture.
Yep.
Yeah,
the culture. And
it's very good, Chris.
And that's exactly right. And but it's not just bread and circuses, because that's the Roman version, right? We live in an industrial age. So if you industrialize bread and circuses, can you see where that would go? And the answer is Hollywood.
Yep.
And so the bottom line to this is that what we're seeing in this last week of hand wringing and pearl clutching about Will Smith is a perfect example of what Adorno and the boys were on about with the culture industry, which is like the function of the culture industry is to keep us entertained. And I always remember that etymologically entertains, right? Entertainment means to come between.
Yeah.
Which is what it does, right? It provides us happy time so we don't know how miserable we are. And
it disrupts that consistency of thought. Yeah.
And it helps you recontextualize suffering in a way that makes it more palatable.
And in fact, enjoyable. How about that?
I was just going to say, I just got 2 words, 3 words. I'll say Weimar and Edith Piaf.
Oh, yeah.
This idea that, but we've got the rose. We've got a voice crying out for us. Right. And so we can get through this. The question at that point is, should you be going through it? Are you being distracted from the real moment? And as you just said, Dr. Mark, the answer is, we are.
And
we've got people dying all over the planet right now through various circumstances, and we're mostly concerned about some privileged dude slapping some other privileged dude.
A couple of millionaires fighting. Now, they happen to be black, which is interesting.
Ooh,
but they're still...
I see what you just said there, though, to me is very interesting. They happen to be black.
In this particular analysis, that's right. Because the fact is that from a class base, this is so the Marxists are always saying about economic class rather than race or gender, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go back and rewind this to make the racial interesting stuff, but that's another way of doing it. But the reality is that regardless of whatever race they are, they're both a couple of multimillionaires doing it.
Yeah.
Now look, it's a whole different context. Will Smith and so they're all, the right wing is feeding into the whole black on black violence and blah blah blah. And if, Bradley Cooper had gotten up and slapped, Sylvester Stallone or something, people would be talking about it, but it wouldn't have kind of the same pungency, right?
I'll use the term impact. Yeah, I think you're right.
But we would still be talking about it. And so in a weird way, this is simply an extension of the culture industry doing its job by turning us. I'll just stop after this. The product of the culture industry, however, is not like cultural artifacts that we would think of, like the movies are the part of the actual product. From Adorno, this is the genius of this. For Adorno and Horkheimer, the product of the culture industry is the audience.
Yeah, because that's what you're building.
There you go.
Out of it is you're building an audience. It just so happens that audience is the hoi polloi. That audience are the workers. That audience is the mechanism by which privilege and money and power gets grown until it's ripe for being picked by
and not for them,
lucky
by
person.
the way, not for them, but by the people on the top. Yep, there you go. And good night, everybody. I'm done. Drive carefully.
There's your mic drop moment.
Some time ago, I forget who coined the phrase, but I think I read it in Jacobin magazine. And I've always thought it was brilliant. The military-industrial entertainment complex that they always drop.
They threw in a third word there. Yeah,
that's a brilliant extension.
It is,
isn't it?
And that has stuck with me quite a bit. And there's another point that just can't go overlooked in this entertainment industry and building the audience piece, which is if you actually look at viewership for the Oscars, they've been in steady, ridiculous decline.
Oh, it was so
low. This is the second lowest Oscar viewing ever, and the lowest was last year.
Yeah, and that's only because of the pandemic. This was supposed to be the Oscars' big return.
Which baits the conspiracy theory question of, was this all entirely staged to get eyes on the Oscars next year?
Well, I'm
going
to say no. I think what we witnessed, to kind of button that whole thing up, we witnessed somebody having a bit of a break with reality, with decorum, with decency. I want to finish on this. I think that for good or ill, this obviously is going to have an impact on comedy. And of course, some of the most significant and visible voices that came to support Chris Rock were his fellow comedians. I mean, really, as a comedian, when it's your life and your passion and your profession, you're going to speak to that. But what do y'all think this is going to do for the idea of satire? We look at comedians, as a voice that speaks truth to power sometimes, quite often. Again, to go back to the late, great Lenny Bruce, Lenny, whenever he was asked about it, he said, my job is to find the line not to cross and cross it. Because my job is really to make you uncomfortable. But there is a line. And sometimes crossing it, I think a lot of comedians sometimes mistake the line as I should cross this and I'm good enough, I'll just cross it. And they don't invest the time to think about what will crossing the line do? Am I crossing the line just to cross the line and be seen as crossing the line and, ooh, I'm so edgy? Or is it crossing the line to make a greater point?
Why.
And I think that's what got missed here. I think that's the reason why Chris looked like he was punching down. He, at that point, looked like he was crossing the line just to cross it. And I don't think that that was good. But what happened as a result of him crossing that line was even more egregious, more in error, and more wrong. And did this wipe the slate clean for Chris on this?
What do you mean?
I mean, is he absolved from the comment because of what happened?
Well, it's all. I mean, the joke,
or is the joke now? Yeah, is it ancillary? Is it not important?
The joke
anymore?
Is getting buried, and the reason the joke is getting buried is because you have all these people that want so hard to be woke that they have forgotten that at the core of being woke is curiosity. And we should be asking more questions than we are making statements.
Says the person who just made a statement.
When you make a number of statements in a row over somebody's behavior, there is going to be a shading or implicit shame in those statements, or there's going to be implicit guilt, or there's going to be implicit indictment, right? And when you start asking questions, you stop pulling people out onto the rug, and you start pulling them in to the conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's just gotten buried. The comment has gotten buried, but the joke was like, had nothing happened, this joke would have been a nothing burger.
I do want to disagree a little bit that the joke has been completely buried, because in some of my other reading and trying to make sense of why this is even a thing that we were talking about, and looking at what not social media hot takes, but looking at what like real writers and journalists and people involved in the industry had to say about it. And
yeah.
Yes, for us in our world and what we're exposed to as four middle-aged white guys, yeah, the joke is completely buried. However, there's a whole other cultural backdrop where the conversation about the joke is continuing. And again, this is from my reading that, and I don't claim to be any expert in this area. I'm repeating what I've read and believe I've learned, that in Black culture, and particularly among Black women, hair is a very, very important part of your identity. It's part of your brand. And making a comment, I mean, the alopecia for Jada Pinkett Smith may be, we may not comprehend really what a painful and embarrassing and sort of shaking you to your core, because it is your brand, sort of experience she's having.
Don't even use brand.
Yeah, your identity.
Identity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of your identity.
More importantly than that, and I think it not only works for particularly for Black women, but for women in general, their hair is their power to some extent.
Well, not only that, again, it was a Black man commenting on a Black woman's appearance. And none of us four guys are capable of truly speaking to what that means. I'm going to actually throw a plug to a fellow Portland-based podcast called Unrefined Sophisticates. My sister Morgan Jones over there. I really encourage you all to go over to Unrefined Sophisticates podcast and hear their take on it, because I don't feel comfortable speaking much to that dynamic, but I think it's real, and I think it's in the room. And the thing that it leads me to, this whole thing leads me to, what discussion would we be having if Will Smith just sat in his seat? What discussion would we be having about the comment and punching down and where Chris Rock was with things? And again, I think, like you're saying, Ty, for the most part, it's kind of gotten buried. But in certain circles, like you said, Chris, it's not. But Mark, what do you think this does to the idea of public satire and its ability? Is this a dent in comedy now? Is this a dent in open speech?
Has been, don't you think? I mean, and I mean, we've had these conversations over the last year or two. It's like, I think this is simply, continuing the conversation about what constitutes real comedy. What's really fascinating to me is how important comedy is in our culture.
I think it's more important than it ever has been.
The joke I've been telling for years is that when politics and culture become a joke, only comedians tell the truth.
Right?
Pretty good, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I like that.
But it's
did you do that by yourself?
I weirdly enough, I kind of did. I know, it was a shock.
So I'm amazed.
It was to me too, but it's sort of true, right? And it's like what I was just noticing, Ty, is like, if you start to pay attention to what's actually on the television, right? And you look to who we listened to, and for me, it was like realizing that my students were getting all of their news from Jon Stewart, right?
I feel better about that.
Which, by the way,
Dylan, Oliver Noah. I mean, I'm an Ollie fan myself.
So easy, right? But you know what I'm saying here, and it's like, Bill Maher and
Trevor Noah,
and all these guys. It's like, this is Trevor Noah. Oh my God! And so it's like, these are their job was to be the court jesters, right? I mean, in a weird way, we're going back to that here, that part of the conversation. Well, you're talking about saying things that are true, right? And being protected in that process, and saying things that are uncomfortable, right? And you have to do that, right? Now you can do it by insulting the king, and you can do it by saying
and
things
making
funny.
the king laugh.
And that's a big difference here, I think. And so I think this is, Andy, I think it's just part of an ongoing conversation we're having about what is the role of speech in society, and the comedians are out there just on the cutting edge of it.
And I want to divorce. Fine.
I'll get the papers.
Wow.
I'm done.
I want to divorce the idea of comedy, and this sounds odd, but I want to divorce the idea of comedy and humor and free speech, because we all have a right to free speech. Everybody can try to be funny. Not everything that you think might come off as funny makes people laugh. And that's this interesting nexus that we're seeing pulled apart. It's almost like we've got this Venn diagram, and there's, three groups of people. Everybody's got one hand on one circle, and we're all pulling. And that nexus point in the Venn diagram is getting smaller and smaller. And maybe we saw that little bubble in the center pop. With
there might
this.
Be, if I were being optimistic about this, and I don't like that when that happens, but
no, you scare me.
But it's a little, in a weird way, the overarching question here is about civil discourse, and we've just had 4 or 5 years of
barbaric discourse,
anti-civil discourse,
and I wonder, this is kind of a return to normalcy. The right wing is like out of their minds because the president now is kind of boring.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of relieved.
I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Are you kidding me?
This is all happening against one other very important backdrop, and that is the passage of the Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida And this whole thing about you can't say things that make me as a white person uncomfortable for being white. I mean, that is and this is not just Florida. This is happening all over. They're burning books. They're complaining about critical race theory.
These snowflakes on the right wing is really hilarious.
So we're seeing this backlash now against sort of the opening of the conversation, saying, no, we got to close it back down because I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm not in a place where I'm ready to own my own shit, and I don't want to be told, I don't want to hear about it, and I'm going to throw a huge tantrum about it.
Well, good comedy, in my book, generally speaking, makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before about how laughter is a uncomfortable reaction most of the time.
It very often can be. And actually, good comedy does that particularly well. I think as we go out here, what I want people to think about is, did what we witness, is this an issue of good comedy versus bad comedy? Is this an issue of punching down? Is this an issue of free speech? Or is this an issue of watching the veil be pulled off, watching the veneer of somebody be pulled off, and a very uncomfortable moment of personal stress boiling over at a time where all the cameras were rolling?
Let me just add one more little piece of radicalism here, which is...
Please do. It's always good to go out on radicalism.
Wasn't the purpose of this whole thing to keep us seated comfortably in front of a TV set between commercials?
Yes, it was.
While we were waiting on our Frankfurt tours? Yeah.
Oh,
well, I tell you what, people, this has been the discussion.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. Think about things. Give us a comment, send us an email, put a comment down in the links or in the thing below on the YouTubes. But if anything, this is just one more reason to be kind to people. Be kind to everybody. There's always something to laugh about. There's always something to find humor in. There might not always be something or someone to laugh at. And that difference sometimes gets lost in the wash. But until next time, everybody, this has been Keep Your Hat On. Thank you for that laugh. I'm Andrew Scott. That's Dr. Mark Peterson. That's Hi, Robert Anthony. That's Chris Vicano. Do everybody a favor. Take care of each other. We need it now more than ever. And until next time, keep your hat on. Perfect timing. We may end up miles from here or miles from a cat box. I don't know. But anyways, take care, everybody. Thanks a lot. Wash your hands, get your shots, etc., etc. Love you. Bye.
Well, there's a chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a narrowband broadcast network production in association with PodSquadPDX.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Chris Vicano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott, along with help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative, Chris Vicano Webmaster, available at VicanoCreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott, available at AndrewScottMedia.com. Got ideas or comments for the show? Email us at talkback@kyhopodcast.com, and don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm your announcer, Michael Brumage. Thanks for listening. I guess.
Out. Okay. Yeah. Good.
So, you know what? I think this discussion also, I think we're missing a big part of this discussion, which is
energy. Dog's looking at me like, what the fuck is he going on about?
Look, I know I'm just an AI algorithm on a random website, but honestly, That really fucking hurt.
NBBN.
The Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.